This video is brought to you by my full-time job. Well, hello there. And thank you for joining me on this lovely jaunt through a small Pennsylvania state park during, as I hope you can tell, peak fall foliage with some widowmakers. So, what I really want to find out today, and as the title probably suggests, this is a bit of a Pixel 8 review, and then Alright, and with that drop test out of the way, because the case is a little too big for the clip that I have, now the question is, did I waste a few $1,000s buying the Panasonic S5, giving that up for a Sony a7 IV for another few $1,000s? Do I need something like that? In my case, yes. But for vlogging, let's see. We're going to see how all the new features do, including the audio eraser, including some of those tools. We're going to test all 3 lenses. I'll talk about some of the regular phone stuff as well. Of course, you can find tons of more professional, better, and for one, quicker videos about the phone itself. But today I just want to have a little fun with the phone camera. Some of you may have come from, or I will link to, the Sony ZV-1 camera review that I did a few months back. The reason I wanted to actually shoot with a brand new phone is because quick is easy, and easier can be fun sometimes. So this makes what I hope to be a nice, beautiful image right out of the camera. And with that, let's get wandering a little bit. Pixels have always been known to have really, really good photo quality. That's been true since basically they came out, and the Pixel 2 secured that legacy for basically the entire existence of the Pixel. But it was always slightly lacking in video quality. With the advent of the Pixel 6 with the new tensor chip, they're able to do a lot of that processing for video as well. My 2 Pixel experiences were the Pixel 3, which I absolutely love, and I wish I could go back to that form factor. My next phone after that was a Pixel 5a, which in that case was actually more of a kind of side upgrade. The processor was relatively similar. It was, newer, but in some ways the Pixel 3 was actually faster. The Pixel 3 had a far better front-facing selfie camera. That phone really focused on selfies. And just wanted to confirm, what you're looking at now is the backside wide-angle camera. So very beautiful wide-angle image. I'm also holding the camera in a little Manfrotto mini tripod with a phone clip. So I can kind of extend my arm out quite a bit and get a really nice wide-angle range. So what you're looking at now, again, is the wide-angle. Let's just do all 3 right here. This is the standard back-facing camera, which I'll probably use the most, but it's also the sharpest and has some natural depth of field for me as well, because it's the biggest sensor and widest lens. And here is the front-facing camera now, which the reason to me is apparent why I'm using the back-facing cameras. Their sensors and images are a little bit better. I think there's able to be more. I think you can do a bit more post-processing with a better sensor and stuff like that too. The other thing is I'm now looking here at my face on the screen rather than naturally going over to the camera as well. So turning it around like that really helps me look at the lens better. And you, possibly, if you want to do some vlogging with this. And the last thing that I forgot to mention about the video is that everything I've been doing while walking and stuff is on the standard stabilization, which, as far as I can tell, apparently iPhones are still the king of that as well, but this is actually pretty good. Walking along, I keep it together pretty well, and again, this is standard. So there's the super crazy wobbly wobbly stabilization fixing if you're on like a jet ski or something. I don't know why you'd want to be doing that, but that's the example they give, or snowmobiling, or it's on some bike. But regardless, this is normal, and it actually holds up pretty well. There's one other feature that I want to test for video before we move on, which is some of the new features for Audio Magic Eraser, some of the features that they touted. Now, in the example that they used for the marketing, there was a very low violin kind of cello sound mixed in with like an ambulance siren in the background. And that, for that intents and purposes, again, this is a marketing video, it could have been totally fake, was that it totally cut out the ambulance so that you could focus on the cello. Now those frequencies are very different. Of course, very high ambulance siren and a very low cello down below. So it's easy to kind of parse those two out if the software knows what it's looking for. In a case like this, there's some bugs in the background. I'm right next to a little creek right here. I'm talking, there's some wind noises. There's tons of little, high and low frequencies going right now. So I want to see how that is able to take it out. And I'll be doing that intermittently while I'm speaking through this. So for instance, now it'll be on. And again, I'll keep talking so that you can actually hear it, whether it's doing a good job or not. Pretty decent version of it. I'm not standing next to traffic or anything. That'll just probably sound bad because it will do that. But now it'll turn it off, and we'll see what the actual difference is. They always say that audio is just as important or as important or more important than the video itself sometimes. So audio is very important, and it's a cool feature that they're doing if this works well. And since this is a nice frame, actually I'm going to use one last feature, which is one they've had on the phones for a little while, which is the cinematic blur. This actually cuts down the video to 24 frames per second and should add a little fake depth of field to me as well. So I'm going to move around frame a little bit here, walk back and forth, stand ever so cinematically looking at this creek. Let's give this the thumbnail treatment. But of course, I think the reason that we are, but I think the reason that we are all here is really for the photo capabilities of the Pixel 8 and see how much they've improved. Now for me, the Pixel 5a I think was the second to last camera to still use that amazing but now old IMX363 Sony camera sensor. I think they started that with either the Pixel 2 probably, and that's what they stuck with for a long time. It's created beautiful images. I'll put some up on screen now. What that Pixel 5a could do, and really the Pixel 2, the Pixel 3, the Pixel 4, all of those cameras could do just amazing images since 2018, 2019. But what that meant is that they couldn't improve much. They did add some cool features, such as night sight, and the astrophotography is just incredible. But how much can they actually do change-wise with photography, with this sensor, this new processor, all that stuff? So to stack it up, I'll have some 5A images on screen, and I've done some comparison shots as well, which we'll get to later. But I've also been carrying in my pack a nice, affordable, and pretty inexpensive Nikon D3500. And I'll be shooting some RAW and JPEG images on that as well to see how they compare, direct scene-to-scene equivalents, also RAW and JPEG, and we'll see if we can spot a difference with that. Now, of course, you can go a lot wider on the Pixel 8 than you can on a camera with a default kit zoom lens, but you can also go a lot closer with a camera like this as well. So we can get some nicer shots, not award-winning, but we can get some nicer shots of some of the fall foliage. And it looks like that I am right, that the main camera can definitely do a lot of the color and exposure processing to make it that HDR image. You can see here if I angle it right there and then go wide angle, it does have a much harder time. To be fair, it's processing more data. Now there's a lot of the shadow in the bottom edges, and it's trying to process now all the sky. But if I go back, you can see there's a lot more detail of the clouds and blue in the sky compared to when I go wide angle. So something to note. Now, what you'll definitely start to pick up on pretty quickly, comparing the JPEG images of the basic Nikon camera to the Pixel 8, is that post-processing that's going on.
So you can especially see it in the bottom corners and really the bottom half of the frame of the Nikon compared to the Pixel. There's way more contrast and saturation in the leaves, which I think is more pleasing, as well as some of the colors in the trees themselves. A bit more yellow. Just overall, the darker parts are a little bit darker and the brighter parts are brighter, which generally a bit of contrast makes for a pleasing image. Obviously, that can backfire a little bit. You can see here, since this was a JPEG, that the sky is pretty much tonally blown out, and even on raw images, you might have a hard time bringing some of that back sometimes. Whereas, of course, on the Pixel, all of that sky detail is kept. Photo preferences are exactly that. They're just preferences. But to me, if you had to just shoot JPEG, of course, I think the Nikon looks a little bit better. But no matter what camera you have, remember the best camera is the one you have. I would encourage you to start practicing shooting raw images on your camera. Shooting in RAW allows you, it does capture more dynamic range in your images, so the brighter it captures the darkest parts in the brighter images. You get a little more leniency if you mess up the exposure or the shutter speed, but what I think is most important is that it gives you a lot of flexibility in post-processing to make the images that you want to see and look at, which is how you hone your skills as a photographer a lot. It kind of helps you know what to look for if you have an edit in mind when you take photos as well. And when you do shoot in RAW, you can actually tell that it's pretty easy to get a very close, similar image with both cameras, which is pretty cool, because one is a phone and the other is just a camera.
Right. We got some ways to go together here, doing a nice little loop around the park. So what I'll do is talk about the phone a little bit in this case. Talked about the video, some of the photo, but how's the actual phone itself? Of course, this is a $700 phone if you were to buy it outright. So cameras alone can go up to this Nikon with a few lenses was $500 a few years ago. Cameras, of course, can go to $2,000, $3,000, $10,000. So what do you get out of everything else? This is just that. Now, as a phone, I think it's incredibly future-proofed if Google can stick to it. It was promised 7 years of security and software updates, which would go to 2030, which is amazing. Typically, you get 3 or 4. iPhones, of course, can go quite a bit higher and always have. The other thing is the 120 hertz screen is very nice. I think that's certainly future-proofed. And I had actually picked up a Pixel 7 a few weeks before the pre-orders were open for the Pixel 8. There was some sale, so I thought I'd try and get it. I ended up returning it because the pre-orders for this phone were nice for the 5A. There was none before. But I returned the Pixel 7. I was also pretty disappointed with it. It didn't feel like an exciting upgrade. It's hard to be excited about some phone releases year to year because they're pretty minor. Big jumps are always good. It's the way to do it nowadays, but 90 hertz screen wasn't that impressive. The phone was a lot wider, which made it very uncomfortable to hold to me, especially with a case on. I like this design a little bit more with the more rounded edges and rounded display. This color, I wish there was a little more exciting color. This hazel is kind of like almost a greenish gray, which I do like a lot. It's very nice to hold caseless, which I do sometimes, but I do have the matching hazel case as well, so that feels really nice in the hand as well. In a lot of ways, I think this is, to me, what appears to be a big improvement from the Pixel 7 to the Pixel 8, purely because I didn't care much for the Pixel 7, and I do like the Pixel 8 so far. With that said, the one thing that I am disappointed in, this is a good test for the audio eraser because there's some crazy motorcycle or something, so we'll see how that holds up. Okay, good, I'm recording. That's the one thing about holding the camera in reverse. The one thing that I'm pretty disappointed with so far, and we'll see if I can improve it somehow, or if Google will, is the battery life. The battery drain started to become bad on my Pixel 5A, and then right out of the box, this one was too, which led me to believe that it was an app of some kind. I've been restricting a lot of app usage. Which doesn't seem to help. I've gone on the Reddit forums and seems like this is kind of a 50-50 chance of being an issue. A lot more stuff on the Pixel 8 Pro, but there's a little thing on the system apps for battery usage that seems to be taking up a lot of space. Really, it's the battery drain for me. It's 10 to 15% overnight, which I don't find acceptable, especially on Wi-Fi. Screen on time is 4 hours. Actually seems to be better when screen is being used, but when it's sitting idle, it just seems to be draining too much battery. So that's the only thing I hope they can fix. I'm always near a charger, whether I'm at work or at home or doing, out in the car or something like that. So it's not a big a deal in that regard. But there are times, of course, that having a good battery is insanely important. So I hope that can be fixed somehow. That's the only major issue I've noticed. Otherwise, beautiful phone, beautiful screen, beautiful operating system. I love all the customization options. And yeah, I'd give it an 8. I'd give the Pixel 8 an 8 out of 10. that framing quite a bit, so let's copy it. I found it in my phone, which is useful, and then I can recreate it to some extent with this camera. Let's go out a little bit. Please do not take woodland photography advice from me, but 3 symmetrical trees should be pretty good. And the last photo mode I actually forgot to talk about was the macro mode, which I don't personally see myself using that often. I guess the wide angle can focus a little bit closer. And the nice thing is that the wide angle lens actually does have focusing, like real focusing. I think the 5A had like limit, infinity focus, which means you can't get any depth of field or interesting shots like that. But this one does. And I guess it focuses closer, but I personally don't see myself using it that much, at least, for phone photography. It is a cool feature potentially, but you lose a lot of depth of field if you don't use the main sensor anymore. Macro just automatically turns to wide angle, and you can focus pretty close with the main sensor. But again, for photos, they're sharper, clearly sharper to me. More processing is able to happen. So to me, I don't know if I'm going to use that mode that much. And this is what is going to impress me. Is let's take a look. We are pretty deep into the woods with a more forested, shaded section of the woods now, about 10-15 minutes before sunset. You can see the sun setting behind me here, and we'll see how the main back sensor is going to do, keeping up. It actually looked really nice just a second ago, so I think I'll be impressed. Pretty damn good sensor for a phone. That's the cool thing, is all these sensors are getting bigger, but it kind of depends on what you do with it for all that stuff to make a pleasing image for everybody. And I'll record now. We're getting into a pretty dark section of the woods. Maybe I'm expecting or asking for too much from these tiny sensors, but we'll take a look at some of this walking footage with the wide angle and see how that's doing in terms of video. Of course, I can open the shutter speed to help a little bit, but we'll see what that looks like. And now I'll switch to the main sensor, which should clean up quite a bit, probably get rid of a lot of those shadows. Again, I'm assuming you can actually see tons of light still going on behind there. So again, looks like the processor can keep up a lot more processing video with the main sensor, the main back camera sensor. Well, the phone definitely got me there. I hope phone's in the car next to me, I think. All right, well, there you have it. I hope you're impressed with the Pixel 8 footage. I hope I'm impressed with the Pixel 8 footage when I see it. Because being impressed is good and being disappointed is bad. So hopefully this is helpful for you in making a purchasing decision, but I'll say with confidence that you can definitely vlog with the Pixel 8.